Hello everybody. Today is September 7th and I was just thinking I haven't made a video for some time with school starting and getting back into full swing with Maddie's golf. I have been a little bit busy. So I thought tonight I want to kind of go over what I did with my last watercolor class, and that's different watercolor techniques. There are more than 6, but I'm going to cover these 6 tonight that are kind of basic and things that you know and will use if you're going to watercolor. So first we're going to start off with one of my favorites, which is wet on wet, which you have seen me do, I think, with the penguin and my flowers, butterflies, several different things. So what you do first with wet on wet is you're going to get the paper wet. It doesn't have to be crazy wet, just wet enough to hold the water. We're not talking about dripping or anything, but you can see how much water is here. Like if I held it up, I don't want it to be dripping down the page. So then you get the paper wet, you pick a color that you know is going to perform well or bleed like this. And it makes these beautiful, almost like blooms on the water. And it just looks so, so cool. And you can add more to it as you go. You can fill in the center part with different colors. It is just a really fun and pretty technique to use. I just make kind of like a big old flower petal there. That's our wet on wet. Okay. Now, our next one is called dry brushing. And what I do here is my brush is wet, obviously, but it's not like sopping wet. And I'm going to dry it off a little bit more than what I had. So it's pretty dry. I'm going to get some paint. Of course, there's water in the paints already because they are watercolor paints. So I'm going to get some water, not water paint. I'm a ding dong. And so I've got my ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to start going back and forth on the paper. And as I go, you can hear the brush going across the paper. And you can see where it's leaving places where it did not pick up color because of that dry effect. This is perfect for drawing the ocean or painting the ocean, and you've got those sunlight hitting the water. You got the sparkly spots on the water, so it's perfect for that. That's just one example that I use the dry brushing for, is for the ocean or for any kind of water. Another one here is the alcohol drops. This is so fun. And when I did it in my last watercolor class, I had several of my own students from the grade school there. And I tell you what, they had a blast. The adults did too, which surprised me just a little bit. They had an absolute blast playing along with this technique because it creates so many unique effects. I'm gonna get a little bleeding going on this with my blending of colors here. Okay, so what I do, and when I say alcohol, I mean regular rubbing alcohol like you buy at the drugstore or Walmart. And what you do, I just put it in a dropper. You can use a dropper, you can use a paintbrush to kind of dab it on. And look how this bled together. I love that. I love the look of that. So you just take and you drop it, and you have like an instant effect of it taking that pigment and spreading it out. So you can do this to do a snow on the ground, on a tree. There's just so many things you could do using this technique. I know. So the kids played with it, and the room that we had the watercolor class in smelled really strongly of rubbing alcohol. It smelled like a hospital a little bit. So those are the alcohol drops. you've got like that crater effect going. You could use it on the mountains, and like some of them you see, you would think like the Grand Canyon or the Badlands. Of course, this is blue, but if you're using the browns or the grays, just think about where you could go with that technique. Let's go over here to charging. This is one of my favorite. I say I love wet on wet. I love alcohol drops. I also love charging. Charging is where I'm going to get my paper wet. It doesn't have to be super wet, just like with wet on wet. You're going to get it wet. And then, I'm going to go back to this teal color. I'm obsessed with my blues tonight. My blues and pinks. So I'm just going to fill it in with my teal color. And you can see it is pretty wet here. Let me move the camera down just a touch. I don't know if we can see that corner. Okay, there we go. So we got it. It's wet. It's shiny wet, but it's not drippy wet. Okay. So I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to go and grab some more of that blue. And I'm just going to kind of outline that teal color. And it's going to bleed into my teal. Now you can do this charging effect with different colors. You could use, let's drop in some orange in there, like right down the middle. I don't think my colors are bleeding very well. Let me try another color with this. It's doing okay. It's just going slow. And you will find too that some colors bleed better than others. It's funny. It just depends on, and it can be the same brand, whereas one color will bleed better than the other. No rhyme or reason to why. They just do. Let's see if this rose color does. See if it bleeds. Maybe. It'll kind of go through and fill in. There it goes. Now it's working. That's the effect that I'm wanting in the charged look. This one's starting to work a little more, but you can see the oranges overtaking the yellow and the blues overtaking the yellow too, and it's all kind of mixing together. That's the look we want with the charging. Just put your colors in there. You can use complementary colors too and see where that takes you. That should go nice in that one. So that technique is called charging. I've seen this when people are painting like metal roofs on houses or buildings that they're painting. I've seen it on octopuses. People are painting the tentacles and they've done it. I've done it with butterflies and I don't know, various other things. And it just turns out so pretty. And it depends on the pigment of your paint as to how it's going to interact with others. Okay, wet on dry. Well, that's wet paint on a dry surface. Totally opposite wet on wet. So dry surface, wet paints, wet paintbrush. It just simply means you're not wetting down the paper ahead of time. So real simple there. And that is wet on dry. And this is basically what you learned to do with watercolors in grade school. You learned how to get your paints wet and your brush wet, and you just painted. And as an adult, when I found out there were so many more things to watercolor than I had ever learned, I was so excited about that. Just so excited about it. Still am, apparently, like a big kid. Okay, and our last technique I want to cover tonight is called blooms, which is a lot like the alcohol drops with the effect just takes longer. Like the alcohol drops, it's almost instant that you see the effects. Blooms happen sometimes when we accidentally get water on our painting. Yes, been there, done that. But sometimes we also want to do it on purpose. So we have that same effect as like the alcohol drops. So I'm just going to go back and get water on my brush and drop it onto my picture. Maybe it won't drip. There. And I think you can see it. Hopefully you can see it happening. I keep over rinsing my brush. Getting too much water out there. You can see where the blooms are appearing everywhere I put water. So it's basically the same effect as the alcohol drops. It just takes longer for it to perform. That's why sometimes you're almost done with your picture or your painting when you notice it and it's already too late. The damage is done because it's starting to dry. But we can also use these techniques to enhance a picture as well, just like we would with the alcohol drops or any of these techniques. So that is it for this evening, folks. If you have questions or if you give any of these techniques a try, be sure and show me. Take pictures of what you've done and share on our page. I'd really love to see that. With that being said, you all have a great night, great weekend. God bless.